Welcome, everybody. Hello, hello. We will give folks just a couple of seconds, probably 30 or 60 seconds or so to trickle in before we get started. But we have a really, really exciting panel today, and we'll be talking a lot about AI, the applications of AI in sort of the controllership world at a team level, but also at a very tactical level. So really excited for this conversation with Blaine and Edwine. Cool. Yeah, with that, maybe let's kick it off. So welcome everybody. I'm Nick. I'm the founder and CEO here at Rillet. If you haven't heard of us, we're building an AI native, AI first ERP. So think of us as if in NetSuite we're built today. Everything you need from a robust ERP, multi-entity consolidation, deferred revenue, etc., just with much more automation and short-term implementation timelines. So with that, get excited to jump in onto the show with Edwine and Blaine here. We have two fantastic panelists today. Edwine here is a CPA and senior controller at Ramp. She has over 15 years of experience at high growth startups and public accounting. She's also an accounting influencer, which I'm personally very excited about, Edwine. You're doing a newsletter called Balance Sheets. If you haven't subscribed to her, please do. There's definitely more accounting influencers that should be out there, and she's a great sort of emerging voice in the space. And then we have Blaine here, CPA and controller, vice president at ZoomInfo. You have probably all seen ZoomInfo pop up in some of your expense reports or filings somewhere. So a very widely used and well-known company in the space. Blaine also has over 15 years of experience in technical accounting and financial leadership, including folks like, obviously, ZoomInfo most recently, but also bigger names like Nike as large companies, as well as PwC. He's a very entrepreneurial accountant, if I can frame you as such, Blaine, the way I got to know you. And he'll have very tactical and unique approaches to AI, which I'm very excited about learning from. So with that, would love to maybe go into introduction. I'm sure the audience is curious to get to know both of you a little better. Maybe starting with you, Blaine, tell us a little about your story and how you got to ZoomInfo.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. And I'm now a hopeful accounting influencer from this moment on. I didn't realize that was an option, but that sounds amazing. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. As you said, Nick, I started out in PwC, really working on very technical aspects just from the get-go. I was very fortunate that way. Worked on a number of IPOs at PwC, debt modifications, acquisitions, and just kind of got my arms around all of this, if there is such a thing, fun accounting to me. That led me to be a technical accounting leader at another company called NetApp. But for me, that all started in the Bay Area, and I had this sort of coming home journey to where I am now, because I'm actually from a place called Vancouver, Washington, which is this perpetual place where people confuse me with living in Canada or Washington, D.C. And so when I heard about this opportunity up north with Nike, I took it. And then there was this little company called Discover.org that turned into ZoomInfo, where they needed some help going public. So I kind of connected my big public experience and IPO experience with small town Vancouver, Washington, where I have been for the last 5+ years.
And what actually, how big was ZoomInfo when you joined? How big was the company overall, but also sort of the finance and accounting org?
As the core team really working on the IPO at that time was about 10 to 15 people. But they had recently sort of sized it up, and I was sort of one of the last pieces to that puzzle at that time. Back in 2019, we had $200-300 million of revenue, growing 50%. Now we're around 1.3 billion-ish in revenue, 1.2, 1.3 based on our last filing. And so it's been an exciting time for sure.
Congrats.
And sorry, our accounting team now is core accountants, probably around 50, 60, add in some AR people. It gets up to 100 plus pretty quickly.
Amazing. Cool. Yeah, over to you, Edwine, for an introduction as well.
Well, Nick, thank you for having me. So I'm Edwine Alphonse. I am an influencer, like you said, or wannabe influencer. I'm currently the senior controller at Ramp, and before that, I was in a similar role at 3 different startups. And before that, long time, my first job was at EY. I was an auditor at EY, and I actually studied in Canada. So I've worked in Canada, Grand Cayman, before I moved to the US with PwC. So pretty much like 10 years in audit. So I like to say I'm an auditor at heart. There's no way I don't think like an auditor. And before before Ramp, I worked at Circle 5 years at Circle. And Circle is a cryptocurrency company. That was one of the first cryptocurrency company. And that's where I had the opportunity to build the accounting team. So Ramp, I joined the company 4 years ago. And it's been great. I was the first accountant, the second one on the finance team. At that time, the company had only 70 employees. We close to 1,200 now. And I lead an accounting team of 8 people.
Awesome. Congrats. And one thing, I'm taking off script after basically the first round of introductions already. But one thing, Edwine, that really stuck out to me with your journey is how you got to Ramp. And it could be like educational or interesting also for other folks to know in terms of seizing opportunity when it feels right. So give us maybe that little insight there on how you actually got to Ramp and how that maybe unconventional interview process went.
Yeah. So that's actually an interesting story. So at my previous job, it was an international company and employees used to travel a lot. And expense report was extremely a big problem for me as the controller there, because I had to chase the employees to get the expense report. And sometimes they will submit them extremely late, like 5 months after the fact. So I was looking for an option and I stumbled upon Ramp. And it just happened they had a job opening as well. And that job opening was like looking for accountant. There was no title, no role, nothing. And I'm like, I want to know what the company is doing. Let me just apply. I applied. They reached out to me. It was like Ramp was not Ramp like that at that time. That was in December 2020. It was a smaller company. They were not in the news all the time. And I went to the interview process. Part of it, they had a really strong technical case. And I was like, oh my God, you just want me to solve all of your problems for you. And I almost gave up because I was like, why do I have to do that technical case? It took me a couple hours on a Saturday to do it. I did it. I think I did well. And I got the job. But what was important for me was getting a product demo. I did get one from Jeff at that time. And when Jeff was like showing me Ramp, I was like, oh my God, this makes common sense. I could use that at my current job. I could have used it at previous job. And I was like, okay, it seems like they have a strong product. Let me join them. Everyone told me, why would you do that? Such a big risk. But I was like, yeah, like what they were building made sense to me at that point.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And yeah, that actually kind of struck out to me, just like as accountants, we're sometimes a bit more focused on risks and like steady state and so forth, but it can pay off really if it feels right, if the opportunity feels right. And also Edwine specifically has a very product focused mind as you get to know her through our conversation here. And that's also really important.
Exactly. I feel like after working in crypto, I couldn't explain to people what I was doing. So it was really great to work for a company where I could explain everything because the company is looking for people like me as customers.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. So that could be a good litmus test for sort of a future job you're assessing, like how good's the product? Do I see the value? Can I explain it? And yeah, but with that, talking a bit more about AI specifically and going into the core topic of our conversation today, would love to, obviously the premise of AI is sort of automation that we hear about a lot, but we kind of assume automation for granted, like that it is a good thing. And I'd love to maybe ask you first, Edwine, as a question is like, you've scaled companies, you've been at fast growing companies. When do you know when to actually automate with technology or maybe just hire for a position? And how do you see that fundamental trade-off before we talk about technology only?
This is such a good question because I deal with that question every day. We have a small team and my company has grown much faster than my team has grown. Like we currently have an accounting team of 8 people. That's include payroll, include accounts payable, and we have a headcount of 1,200. So if I had the opportunity, I would hire 20 more people. But sometimes like you cannot throw people at the problem and you need to think long-term. And long-term is investing in automation, it's investing in AI. So what I do usually, I look at what I want to get done. As an auditor, I do like a reverse kind of analysis, looking what do I want? And what I want is to have clean auditable financial statement, which brings me to clean auditable reports which bring me like, how do I build this report? So do I automate the task to get to the report? Or do I automate this reconciliation? If it's something that can be done in-house, I'm extremely blessed to have an engineering team, engineering resources that help us automate the reports. If it's something that there is already a software available for it, we usually look at the software and we implement it. And if it's something like we need help, like there's no solution, like there's no current solution, and it's going to be really hard to create it, that's when I'm like, okay, it makes sense to hire someone. So when you're looking at the AI, like look at, first of all, automation, because if you automate it, you'll never have to do it again. Like you just press a button, it's done. Second, like what is the level of efforts of creating that automation? Because at the end of the day, it needs to be auditable, it needs to be reliable, it needs to be complete, accurate, like everything that an auditor would want. So if it's hard, like invest in it, make sure that as you're investing in it, you have all the audit assertions included in your reporting, all the logic you need. And if it cannot be done, I think it makes sense to hire someone and just like start the process of manual reconciliation. But either way, like whatever you're building, it needs to be able to compare that with your manual processes, just to make sure that what you're building can pass the test of any Big Four auditors.
Yep, that makes sense. Cool. And I'd love to click a level deeper on sort of that automation. I know you, Blaine, had a really unique, and I loved your approach in terms of how you want to actually permit and implement AI in your various organizations that you're running. So maybe take the audience here through your thinking a little bit and your approach there.
Yeah, I'll actually probably build on what Edwine said. Now, I think that the first question that we always get asked whenever we want to do something new or different is, what's the ROI? Like that's tends to be a very common question. And I think historically, and this is my personal views here, but I think historically, the pace of learning and the pace of change has been more or less relatively aligned in terms of pace of change in technology. And I personally believe that maybe it started to get away from us a little bit. I don't know how many people on the call have used like a Lambda function in Excel or really know VBA like super well to make macros. But then RPA came out and that was the new thing. And that was almost a flash in the pan, and that's kind of gone now, right? And now we're starting to see it sort of depart in terms of pace of change, and our team's abilities collectively to adopt new change is still somewhat limited, still more linear, whereas the pace of change in technology is becoming more exponential. So I am encouraging my whole org and my leadership team even to start thinking of the ROI question of not ROI today, but the ROI in 2 years, right? And because when the next thing comes out, right, I don't know what the next thing is. We're talking about agentic solutions. It's not like you're going to flip a switch and you're going to be ready to adopt it across a 100-person org tomorrow. So just in general, our approach has been democratize this. I want everybody on my team to have access to AI. Also, I would note this is probably the first time in history where the latest technology has been free to use. Like, you know, I can't use an electron collider, I can't use a quantum computer, but I can have a software for free that I can log into, and my daughter can write a paper in iambic pentameter with a stroke of a couple keys, right? Like that's insane to me. So our approach has been, we want a secure system that everyone can use. Because by the way, if you're not providing a secure system, people are using an insecure one. And we've seen things in the story in news and in stories where that has turned out rather not well. And I just want people using it. I want people to understand the basics of really starting with Gen AI. Like, do you know generally how it works? High level. Do you know the risk of hallucinations, that sometimes it can confidently give you a bad answer and it sounds really right? Do you understand that the way you ask it a question and you prompt it can drastically change the outcomes that you get? I just like, if someone on my team says, hey, I got into the system, I started using it, I asked it a question on, you know, what am I going to do with my kid this weekend? I'm like, great, fantastic. That's exactly what I want. Just become familiar with it. So for my team, we have, like I said, 100+ people. Everybody on my team has access. I implore them all to use it. And then I think the next stage of that is getting into the prompt engineering aspect. You solved a problem that helped you. Go share that prompt with other people so they can take it and improve it, and trying to reward that behavior through whether it's a spiff or a gift card or something to that effect. But like, just generally speaking, it's there is a place for the large initiatives. There's definitely a place where we got this big problem. Let's bring in the engineering, the machine learning experts. Let's solve these hard problems. And we do that too. But there is a parallel process, which is more grounds up. Let's go for not the one project with huge ROI. Let's go for the 100 projects with little ROI that sum to something bigger. Because I think in 2 years' time, that is going to be by far and large way more benefit to the company.
Agreed with you, Blaine, on that. I think for us, we've divided it into two categories. Like there's like the product accounting side where we make money, and there's also the corporate accounting side, which is like day-to-day accounting operations. So on the accounting operation side, like we've looked at the different tasks and reports that people do, like for month-end close. Let's say, like for example, something easy, payroll entries. So usually, like you'll get like your payroll GL or your payroll mapping from your payroll provider. At Ramp, we have a lot of allocation that we have to do because we like to get really detailed data per cost center, per product, per everything. So one GL payroll entry might have 2,000 lines. So my senior accountant, she has to go and map that based on some allocation schedule that we use. So we've been working with Flowcast, and we've been working with ourselves, like internally, to figure out how can we automate that GL mapping and GL allocation. So that's more on the corporate accounting side. On the product side, as we build in the product, my team has like project like called Ledger, where we go and we map every edge scenario of that project to an accounting GL. So as we build in the product, we also map in the accounting transactions and the accounting entries that should be made. And at the end of the month, we have a Slack integration, like we have a Airflow Slack integration, and my team get a report, and all they have to do is look at the report, review it, make sure it aligns with a transaction details ledger, that we tie it to their bank accounts, and they can just post it. So the reports already give you like all the coding that you need for your, like we use NetSuite, for example, for your accounting software posting.
Yeah.
So you can build it externally, or you can build it as part of your journal entries. Like one thing like we don't have to worry about is like expense reporting. Like all of our expenses, we use Ramp, for example, those are already mapped and categorized as per the transaction. All we have to do is do like a really quick review to make sure that the mapping and categorization is done properly. So you can create that AI logic or create this AI agent as part of your close. And for us, like the first step was like creating the reports. The second will be like create the reconciliation and make sure we can automate and have AI help us with the reconciliation. And then after, just like look at exception reports. And then at some point, my goal, which is like my North Star is just to do like a continuous accounting, just press a button and be able to close the book, which I think like that's a goal that I don't know when, maybe at some point, 90% of the book close could be done through AI or through some kind of automation.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, awesome, cool. Thank you for sharing. So it's maybe for you, Blaine, as well. Like, what are sort of the tactical things that you guys are using at ZoomInfo that help you?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a really important question. I think if I was listening to this, that's exactly the question I would want someone to ask me. So first and foremost, I would say the first question is, hey, Blaine, you said get it to everyone. That sounds expensive. And the first thing I would share is if you're not used to these technologies or using them or never tried to go procure them, they really aren't that expensive. Every one of the big like generative AI, LLM model companies, you're talking about the Googles or the Anthropics, whatever, OpenAI, they will offer you a per license model. That will happen. And it's out of the box, it's easy. But almost every company I've ever talked to today has some private cloud that they're already hosting in. You can, you know, there's details in here, but basically you can go and host that LLM that they offer, host it in your own environment for basically a relatively low fixed cost. And then all you're paying for is not a per license model. So you don't have to worry about, well, this person didn't use it, so I'm paying $30 a month for them anyways. You basically just pay per M token, million tokens, which is a relatively low amount. So like first and foremost, without getting into details, there is a way to do this at scale, very cost efficiently to get it in people's hands. If you're also not familiar with generative AI technologies, the thing that you just kind of the starting point is it's really good at language, right? It's good at writing things. So, you know, if you're scaling quickly and you've got accounting policies that you need to write, like it's really good at like giving you a starting point. And through prompt engineering, where you say, hey, you're an expert policy writer in accounting, and I want the output to look like this, and I'm going to give you an input that this is the topic, and here's the things I want to make sure you cover. It actually does a really good job and really accelerates the amount of product that you can create from just a policy writing perspective. We also kind of talked about when do you hire versus when do you automate. A lot of people are hiring in low cost centers. So you might have people in Kolkata or Mumbai or maybe somewhere in South America. Generative AI is actually really good if you save the prompt at filtering and revamping communications, especially if they're external communications for those teams, or maybe English isn't their first language. So we utilize that as a use case, which we found to be very beneficial and helpful, right? It speeds it up, gives more confidence to the response and the communications. So those are two use cases, like almost instantly. You could do this tomorrow, right? I think the other thing for us, and I kind of go into the big initiatives, one of the areas that we have worked on, which I'm really proud of, if we used AI to help us make a machine learning algorithm, which uses our proprietary data. And if you're not familiar with ZoomInfo, we are a go-to-market platform. It's amazing, help sellers sell, all of those things. But the background of that to help us do that is we've got an amazing data set. So we've actually been able to utilize our data set with a machine learning algorithm that helps us predict if someone is going to pay us and when. And right now it predicts 75%, or you know, you can think of it that way, but we have this new business risk scoring model that predicts a very high percentage of risk cases where people don't pay us. And it self-trains itself. If it finds out that its accuracy is slipping, it goes back to the latest data and retrains itself to come up with a new and better model all the time, and sort of a self-educating way, which is amazing and really helpful for us. I would say in terms of other things that you can get ROI out of from these small, more easy to win edge cases or use cases, is we also have a lot of IT tickets that we put in place right now. That's exploding right now because IT has never been more important arguably than right now, right? You have a new ERP system, right? If anyone's ever implemented a new ERP system, you probably will at some point, especially if you're a fast growing company. The huge win is to turn it on, and then the next huge win is to survive the next 12 months. It feels like with that, you have this communication between engineering and accountants. There's like, this is what I need, and they understand the technical aspects. There's a lot of people use Jira just to throw out a name, but there's other ticketing processes for this. We are finding that we had almost a fully dedicated person that wasn't low level, like a pretty high level individual who knew enough about the IT side, but also the accounting side to help bridge the gap in communication there and to fill out a ticket that people could just action on. So we built a prompt that now everybody in the team can use that says, and it's a chatbot, right? We built it in a way where you can theoretically drop it into any LLM you want, where it starts off with saying, what's the problem you want to solve? Someone says, well, I need our ERP system to do this. And they say, okay, well, tell me more about it. Where does the data come from? And it just takes you through a conversation, asks all the questions in the way that an accountant would want to answer them. And then on the back end, it translates all that into engineering speak and says, this is what they're looking for. This is the source of the data. This is the system, and basically pre-prepares it in a format that the engineering team can then action on, and they can create a Jira ticket for it. And we found that has taken like half a headcount out almost with all of the different levels of activity we have in that space. But the great thing about that one is I didn't come up with that, right? That was somebody on my team who came up with that. And as soon as she did, and she showed it to the rest of my team, we had 10 people raise their hands saying, can I use that? Can I use that? And I think that's what I'm looking for. Like those to me are like the moments where I'm like, that's why I democratize this, because that happens times 10. And now we're talking about real savings and real velocity.
That's fantastic. The crowdsourcing there. Amazing.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. I'm just going to add some in terms of accounting policies. Like we drafted a lot of accounting policies in GPT. So we just put the financial statement notes, put the financial statement. And we asked GPT, look at the significant accounts and draft a template accounting policy for them. And that was done. Of course, my technical senior manager, she had to go and make sure everything was correct and properly documented. But that kind of like helped her with a really, really good starting point. Ticketing, Blaine, like what you're doing is great. not at that level yet, but we use like a similar ticketing system for finance questions and payroll questions. And we have this bot called Rampy, and Rampy will answer your questions. If this is like something we have documentation already, let's say like you have questions about the expense policy, I'm traveling, or what is my limit, Rampy will give you your questions, your answer automatically. If it's a question that needs more individual answers, it will alert us and the right person will answer you. Same on the payroll side as well. So there's a lot you can do and you don't need a lot. You don't need like expert. It's just setting it up and having like support. So on in my team, like I don't code. Like I'm coming from like a Big Four background. I don't code, I don't do SQL, but I do have team members that have SQL experience and have coding experience. And if I don't, sometimes I reach out to my IT team and ask them to support us when needed.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing. The other thing that I just, I think this is, again, sort of probably the core of why a lot of folks are here, that I wanted to share is sort of like the way to, again, I think Blaine put it really nicely. It's really good with text. So play to the strengths of the technology, democratize it first. That is fantastic. And also the way you've done it at scale is really impressive. But then also like know where it's good at, and kind of think outside the box a little bit. So I really like this use case playing around the requirements of the ticketing thing to engineering, translation, and so forth. There's also use cases around onboarding new hires or training if you're scaling quickly, like process documentation. There's a bunch of work that us accountants do that are actually not core accounting related, just in the day-to-day. And so use also the technology for these types of things, again, where it's very good at doing it. Another thing that I heard about recently, actually, which I thought was pretty cool, goes a little bit in line with what you said, Edwine, around like prompting your payroll data and so forth, is like, if you have a big meeting with one of your executives tomorrow, give it the data or the document that you've prepared and have the basically ChatGPT ask you, what are questions my CFO or executive XYZ would ask? And actually almost trains you or pre-prepares you for that sort of interaction. So again, a lot of interesting things you can use it that relate to various aspects of our respective day jobs.
And actually, I'll just throw in a couple more that we've used it for, just really quick. We have absolutely used it for the Q&A session planning, 100%. That's a good one. But I also just wanted to stretch the imagination here a little bit of what we've used it for. It doesn't have to just be policies or process docs. You know, a new XBRL requirement comes out. Like I have taken it and I've said, these are the new requirements. And then you, throughout the prompt, you say like, I not only want you to tell me the answer, but also show your work. And there's some prompt engineering techniques you can utilize where you're not just 100% relying on the output, but it can actually prove it to you. I've dropped in our draft 10Q 10K because it's a secure environment and said, does this meet the requirements of these new XBRL rules, right? And it says, here's what they are. First, these are your XBRL requirements as I understand them. This is where you meet it. Here's the summary of what you're missing. Like you can do that across the board in an accounting disclosure checklist as an example, right? So like there are a ton of use cases that are only limited by my ability to imagine what the next use case is.
Exactly, I agree. And they can even write your 606 memo. So we've even like dropped some of SaaS agreements into GPT and have GPT analyze them and create the 606 memo. So, and even give us like a invoicing and payment schedule based on the contract. So this is something like someone would have to do like in 2-3 hours that can be done in a matter of seconds.
Awesome, cool. And I also wanted to open it up for the audience here as well. Two things actually that I usually mention at the beginning of these sessions. If you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. Some folks already naturally asked some, so I'll add it shortly. As also, if you have ideas that you wanted to share with everybody on how you're using AI in your day-to-day, I'm sure the panel here would love to learn, but everybody else on the call too. So feel free to use the chat as well. In terms of one question here, that relates to something you shared, Edwine, and maybe Blaine, you have good intuitions there too, given sort of your technical mind, is a question here coming in around like, okay, I have a Big Four background, like a more traditional sort of accounting background. How do I know what person to hire for in my team that brings these automation chops or the more technical abilities that I maybe don't have? So maybe starting with you, Edwine, like how do you assess talent in that regard to complement your background?
So I had to hire someone that was more technical than me, and we did hire that person maybe 3 years ago at Ramp. So this is someone that was a CPA, so we were extremely blessed that that person had a CPA, but their interest was in data and analytics. So when we posted the job, we wanted someone with SQL and Python experience, and they had that experience. But we also assessed that experience. We gave them like a coding test to make sure they could do it. And I think that was the best hire because that person was able to start all the automation that we needed in our reporting. So you can hire the person, which is what we did, or you could work with other advisory companies. Like at Ramp, we use advisors as well, and they help us think about how to build these reports and how to automate them. So I've used internal employees, I've used advisors, I've also used engineering team members because they work on product, they don't work on accounting. Sometimes they don't have that accounting mindset, but we can engage them and have them build and teach us as well. And myself, I'm learning a lot. So whenever I'm at home, if I'm working on something, I'll go on YouTube and just like have the YouTube in the background and people talking about how they building this, like building that. So I take notes, I learn, and my team, we teach each other as well. So if someone finds something interesting, like we have time dedicated to meetings to teaching the other, oh, this is what I've done to GPT, this is what I've done with Claude. Let me teach you all how to do it. So there's a culture of learning and sharing that needs to be done. And I don't want people to feel like ashamed. Oh, I don't know, I'm not raising my hand. Like we're all in this together. And at some point, I do hope that in accounting school, at university, like we start teaching these classes. But until then, we just have to figure out how to learn from each other or get the resources that we need to support these efforts.
I generally agree with those answers. If I were to give my 2 cents, I would say obviously I can't answer for exactly what whomever asked the question what they need because it's going to be a little bit specific. But I would answer it maybe 3 quick ways. One is typically if you want more automation out of what you have today, my go-to for anybody without knowing who asked the question would be go look for a data scientist. Data scientists are generally really good at connecting to data and getting the data out that you want in a very quick timeline and turnaround. So find a good data scientist. Don't have to be super senior, but generally they're very good at R, they're very good at Python. They understand systems relatively well, and they can get you a lot of automated reporting pretty quickly. If you're talking about AI specifically, I think on one hand, you got the big initiatives that I sort of referred to. In that sense, you just got to hire for the people who understand probably API development, who can plug into these LLMs and have a general understanding of the way LLMs work. And I think they come out pretty quickly in the woodwork when you start to hire for those people. And there's a number of them that are coming online, and they're all very valuable. The last one though is I think when it comes to democratizing, like we have to break this myth that this is too hard to learn. Like don't start from that mindset. Like you have to start with, I don't need somebody who's smarter than me, who knows the technology because I'm not good at technology. You have to start from I can do this and I will do this. And I expect everybody who's on my team can do this too. And so I don't actually think you need to hire to figure out how to get a prompt engineering course. Start with like super simple. LinkedIn Learning has a 45-minute training that goes through basically soup to nuts, everything you need to know to get the basics. Go take another hour-long training on prompt engineering specifically. And like you got 90% of it right there. That's an hour and 45 minutes of training, and you're probably better than 90% of the people out there in accounting orgs.
Awesome, cool. Go do. There was I think a question that we wanted to hit on anyways around security. So I wanted to kind of bring that in from the audience here on how folks think about security and specifically uploading either financials into ChatGPT. I know, Blaine, you have a potentially special setup there, but yeah, how do you think about the risks there and the downside? What information do you feel comfortable sharing with these large model providers, whatnot? Give us a bit of context.
I'm going to give you the non-super technical answer, and probably somebody out there would say like there's some technical nuanced reasons why I might be 100% accurate. But think of an LLM as a brain, right? Think of it as it's a pre-trained brain that knows things. The one that you log into ChatGPT, it's like a brain that they're loading up all the time, and everything you tell it, it's learning, and it's going to go utilize what it learns with anybody who wants to interact with it. And you're helping develop a product that's part of the reason why it's cheap. What I was referring to is you can take a copy of that brain and go put it into your own body. It's disconnected from the world. You can interact with it. It knows everything it learned before you copied it, but it doesn't share it with anybody. It is your brain. You borrowed it. You do pay to use it, but it's not information that's going outside of your secure cloud environment. So it's just as secure as something that you're hosting on your own internal SharePoint site or Google Drive or whatever it is. I think that who knows exactly where this is going. I think people are just a little abundantly cautious of saying, well, don't share the most secretive latest thing just in case. But I think that's just people not really fully understanding the technology. Talk to your security people. I'm certainly not advocating for you to do anything you're not comfortable with. But I think generally speaking, if you do it in the way that is actually cheapest, it is the most secure, and you're generally safe from your security concerns. Where you get into trouble is when you have people going outside of your environment and they're using the brain that's hosted by Anthropic, by Google Gemini, by OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Yeah, I agreed with this. I think like if you stay in your working environment, you should be fine, because even if you're using GPT or Anthropic, they have this version that is protected, that is not used to train other people, other companies. Like that's like boxed to your own work. And usually like my legal team and my InfoSec team, they do look at these contracts. They do make sure that we have this secure environment where we can experiment and also do like actual work. So make sure you stay there. Like I will not encourage someone to go open like GPT and put the financial statement there or put like their operating model there. No, stay in your secure work environment.
Yeah, and I actually just really read the question. I misinterpreted it first. If you can't stand up your own cloud environment, you have to do exactly what Edwine just said, which is you create an agreement, and they all offer them where they agree to not share any information or train their models. So it's the managed services, I think is what it's called, where they do managed service. They manage it for you. They host the cloud environment, but it's still a service for you, and you still get the security. But
you
obviously,
might
it's a little less secure.
more. Yeah, you might pay slightly more, but you know your data, your information is not used to train other people.
Yeah, sounds good. And maybe just drilling into one click deeper here, Edwine, you mentioned a little bit, what are, in a self-hosted environment, for example, or even for you, Blaine, sorry, in your case, self-hosted, and in Edwine's case, managed services, where's the line still? Are there certain things that you feel comfortable sharing or don't anymore? Like, what are maybe tactical things so people can calibrate their own risk tolerance?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me, whatever's public, people know I'm okay putting it in that secure environment. If they're like confidential documents, I ask. I'll go ask my InfoSec team before I upload it. We do have strong controls at Ramp. So sometimes, like even if you share something on Slack, you get like that red flag. You can share that on Slack. Or even you put something in GPT or Anthropic that you shouldn't, you get that flag as well. So there's a training and education that needs to be done. But in doubt, always ask your IT and security team.
I don't think I have a much different answer, slightly different way. I am actually okay putting in stuff that I would call confidential because of our environment. I feel good about that. I still wouldn't, let's say there was something very, very confidential. If it was going to make front page of the news, I'm not going to put it in. Or if it would, I would remove out any of our names. I would remove out anything that could be taken, just with a screenshot. And I just generally take an approach of just be reasonable and have a reasonable amount of caution. So if I kind of anonymize it a little bit by taking out my name, but if it's the second page or third page, it's supposed to be secure anyways, I shouldn't have to worry about this, I go for it. Like I just told you, I dropped in a disclosure for my 10K that wasn't public yet to figure out if the XBRL tagging requirements were met, right? Like I'd done that. But there was nothing there that I think would have, in that excerpt, that I think, even if it was public, that I couldn't have been like, look, it shouldn't have happened. I can go sue the person who did whatever they weren't supposed to do. But nothing that I think would have been like earth shattering.
Thanks for sharing. And yeah, I think the redacting as well is like a big one. Like it's not black and white. Do you share? Do you not? Like there are certain things that may not be needed for your analysis that you can kill, that you don't load in. Like there's a big gray zone actually there in the middle too. Yeah, great. I think just to wrap us up, there's one more question that I can hit off as part of this question, but I think the broader question that I'd be really excited to hear from you guys is like, and it's sort of forward-looking, how does AI change finance and or accounting over the next couple of years, in your personal views and minds?
Oh, that's a good question. I think people are a little bit scared that AI is going to replace accountant. I do not think this is going to happen. What I think is going to be challenging is accountants that don't use AI, they're not going to be as efficient as the one that use AI. So I do feel like AI is going to change the way we do work, and it's going to give us an edge. It's going to enable us to spend less time doing silly things like manual tasks that don't make sense. Why are we doing them? So let AI do it. It's also going to give us time to provide insight, also going to give us time to better read the data. So the accounting profession is going to change. Like they're going to ask us more. And with AI, I think we will be able to level up and do it, but we have to embrace it and we also have to learn. So I do feel like before it might take someone like 5-10 days to close, with AI, that should take like, I don't know, half that time. And with the rest of the time, accountants or finance professionals, they'll have better opportunities to scale up, level up, and provide better insights.
Awesome. You, Blaine?
100% agree. I would frame that as it's going to be really important that our jobs as leaders of accounting groups is to motivate, encourage, and empower people to dive into this. I think it changes the required skill set of the future. I don't think it means less people. By the way, every expert I've talked to or read about, they all say the same thing. Nobody is saying that jobs are getting cut. Like that's just not a thing. In fact, if you go back, there's a great book, Exponential Organizations. It's an amazing book I would have everyone read. They've proven this through time since basically the 60s when Moore's Law came out, that this new technologies, even exponential growing ones, which it has been stable through the 60s, hardly ever results in that. Like we've never really seen that as a human species where we need less people because of these things. It just slightly changes. My bigger takeaway from this is it's not necessarily, yes, it's called Exponential Organizations. I think it's sound 2.0 now. Ishmael, can't remember the name of the author, but highly recommend it. I think it's a great one. I think the bigger thing to think about is like the context. Like we are a horizontal organization in every organization. We touch everybody. We're not necessarily customer facing all the time, but we're sort of at that center. And with that position, you play a critical part of enacting this velocity that your organization can handle, right? Like we have a lot of breaking power in organizations, whether you're HR, accounting, or legal. These horizontal organizations do. Within the larger context, and this is a long-winded answer, but I think for me, this is where my head goes. I think the world is going to be changing in the next 3 to 5 years. If you go back to the year 2000, the number of Fortune 500 companies that even exist as of 2020, like not like are they in the Fortune 500 anymore? Like no, they're gone. They've been acquired. They went out of business. Over half of them are gone that in the next 20 years. Whereas you go back to like the 60s and you looked at maybe this S&P 500, the average life of those companies was 60 something years. This is the impact of advancing technologies. Lululemon, great company, love them. Like their ability to eat market share from a large retailer in a number of 5 years has never seen at that pace before. An energy drink that I had never heard of now has more revenue than my company, and that's a physical product. Right? Companies just grow really fast. So I think in my mind, the important piece of this is that we need to be able to respond to the company's demands on us, which are going to be more and more. We should go faster and faster because being second might have been great in your space 20 years ago. Being second in your space today is a lot more harmful because market share changes so fast. So that's my mindset. It's like we need to be just as fast as our companies demand because it's going to actually make our companies more successful. You layer in there actually making better data-driven insights and all the rest of the things that technology and automation can handle, like a good ERP system. It can get you better data faster. That's not just about closing the books faster. That's about making better decisions, right? There's all those things are still true. That's how I think of it. I think it's going to change because the speed's going to change. And I think that everybody can do it. That's the main point. And I don't think we need less people, probably need more people. But we just got to be ready so that we can meet that curvature line. We need to start aiming up so that we can meet it on the upswing.
That is an awesome way to end the session. Thank you so much, both Edwine and Blaine. You both have been fantastic. Everybody, enjoy your journeys, embrace the change and of the democratization of this technology. Thank you very much for dialing in. Hopefully this session helped a small piece in this journey. Yeah, look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Yep. Thanks for having me.